Campaign 2018 is sponsored by Wisconsin Hospital Association, Wisconsin Counties Association, Wisconsin Realtors Association, Marshfield Clinic Health System, AARP Wisconsin, and Campaign 2018 partner Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel.
Terry Larson of Juneau is the Constitutional Party candidate for Attorney General. The election is November 6th. Terry, welcome to WisconsinEye. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
I noticed on your website that you don't take very subtle positions, and so one of them says that U.S. Supreme Court decisions are not the law of the land. Can you explain that, please?
Well, they're not. They're merely opinions or decisions. No court opinion repeals or revises our state laws or enacts new laws for the citizens of Wisconsin. They're just opinions.
Okay. What do you consider your number one issue in this campaign for Attorney General?
Probably the enforcement of Supreme Court opinions as law, as I term it. The Roe versus Wade decision and the Obergefell versus Hodges decision in 2015 have effectively been applied as law in our state. State attorneys general stopped enforcing our state's laws against abortion after the 1973 Roe versus Wade decision.
Yes, sir. And
they stopped enforcing the current Attorney General stopped enforcing our state's marriage laws, which only provide for heterosexual marriages. What should have happened is that the citizens of Wisconsin should have directed our legislature to change our abortion and marriage laws after those opinions were given to us, and then they should have changed the laws accordingly if that's what the citizens of Wisconsin wanted them to do. But in neither case, in both cases, we should not have allowed Supreme Court opinions to be enforced as law.
Well, if you're Attorney General elected on November 6th and take office in January, would you then enforce the ban on abortion that's still in our books?
I'm not sure whether I could do that or not. First thing I would do is not repeat the mistake with upcoming court decisions. I'm expecting that we're going to have another court opinion before long that says men who males who wish to be females have a constitutional right to identify and express themselves as females, which means they have a right to share public facilities, including bathrooms, locker rooms, and showers with females in Wisconsin. That's how that will be applied. And it's already being applied that way in advance of the opinion. We have businesses and employers in Wisconsin requiring females to share facilities with males who think they are or wish they could be females. When we get that court opinion, the legislature needs to prohibit that, and I would not stand for enforcement of that opinion as law in the state of Wisconsin either.
If the legislature didn't take that interpretation, would you as the Attorney General still pursue some legal action, sir?
Well, I would be forced to, I would be responsible for enforcing our law, whatever law the legislature enacts. I would like to take legal action now against employers or businesses in Wisconsin that are requiring females to share facilities with males already. But I would definitely be arguing in front of the legislature that we prohibit this in Wisconsin after we get that court opinion.
If you don't recognize the U.S. Supreme Court decisions as law of the land, what do you think is the law in Wisconsin now on same-sex marriages, sir?
Well, the law only provides for certain forms of heterosexual marriages in Wisconsin. At the time, I would have come down pretty hard on these county clerks who were issuing same-sex marriage licenses immediately after we had a lower court opinion that our constitutional amendment was not constitutional. These people began issuing same-sex marriage licenses 24/7 in the weekends, as I recall, and those marriages were not legal under state law at that time. And they haven't been made legal under state law since either. They're legal because the court opinion that they should be legal is being enforced in Wisconsin. We haven't changed our marriage laws yet, and we didn't change our abortion laws since 1973 either. Or we changed them, but we didn't make it legal under law in the state of Wisconsin.
Would you restructure the Department of Justice, and if so, how?
I don't know about restructuring it.
Well, one example is the Office of Solicitor General was just created over the last 2 or 3 years to advocate in federal courts on federal issues. Would you continue the Office of the Solicitor General? The Solicitor General has filed in federal cases and clean air cases and the Affordable Care Act cases. Any position on those two?
No, and I'm not aware of any need to restructure it. I think everything's going to kind of change if we start again enforcing our state laws when they come into conflict with Supreme Court opinions. It's going to be kind of a different mode of thinking for the legal profession, I dare say. I could say this since I'm not a lawyer. An attorney general who was a lawyer really can't pursue stopping enforcing Supreme Court opinions as law because he'd probably get disbarred. He'd probably lose his membership in the National Association of Attorneys General. He might even get poisoned by the Russians. I don't know, but this is kind of the legal profession bread and butter. You go to law school, you become a lawyer, and you start filing lawsuits, and some of those lawsuits include get taken to the court, and if you're lucky, you get to go to the Supreme Court where they get to confirm whether your legislative acts are constitutional or not. And if you're successful with enough lawsuits, you get to retire as a judge, a higher-ranking lawyer, if you're lucky in the end. But I am, and again, I can do this and say this because I'm not a lawyer, but I am suggesting that all states' attorneys general since 1973 who stopped enforcing their state laws did the wrong thing. And the current Attorney General Schimmel repeated that mistake after Obergefell versus Hodges. And these people aren't going to be inclined to admit they were wrong. They're not going to be too enthused about that. But nonetheless, I think that's what's happened here. And
so there's no requirement in Wisconsin that the Attorney General has to be a lawyer?
No.
There's no requirement. No. So what's your career background then if you're not an attorney?
I'm a technical writer. By nature, I kind of like figuring out how things work and explaining things. I have something of an odd or unfortunate hobby reading Supreme Court decisions over the years. And I say it's unfortunate because some of the things in these decisions don't make any sense, to say the least. The Obergefell decision was ridiculous, and the Masterpiece Cake Shop decision, which followed it, was the second most ridiculous decision in recent years. But
No, the cake chef case, was that the one in
Yeah.
Colorado?
yeah,
Where the Supreme Court held that the Colorado baker did not have to make
Correct.
a wedding cake for a same-sex couple, correct?
correct.
And where are you on that? I mean, you just said it was ridiculous. Why?
All that did was affirm the Obergefell decision.
Again.
All that did was affirm that Obergefell is law. I think the Masterpiece Cake Shop decision was like passing the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments to the Constitution, providing protections under law for Black Americans, and then enacting the Jim Crow laws after that. The Democrat Party's Jim Crow laws, they effectively denied equality to Black Americans. We have the Obergefell decision, in which the justices declared that people who are gay have a constitutional right to marry. So then we have the Masterpiece Cake Shop decision after that, creating exceptions. It's ridiculous. They either have a constitutional right to this and civil rights here, or they don't. That's just as ridiculous as the Minnesota legislature legalizing same-sex marriage, and then in law, they set up all kinds of exemptions for people. You either have a constitutional right and civil rights here, or you don't.
The Attorney General filed with other attorneys general this lawsuit that's now pending to void the Affordable Care Act. If you were Attorney General, would you have authorized that same intervention lawsuit to try to void the Affordable Care Act?
It had to be done. I'm in agreement with it, but the Attorney General's party should have repealed the Affordable Care, or stopped this before it got to the point where he had to file a lawsuit.
Why do you think the Affordable Care Act should be repealed?
I just don't think the government should be in the business of providing I don't think we should have created this additional entitlement in the first place. We have Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security. We've been told for decades that they're going to collapse, and now we've created a fourth entitlement. We should have maybe done something to improve HSAs or something, but no, this whole Obamacare thing, no, it's a bad deal as far as I'm concerned. And then we were supposed to make it law so we could understand what's in the bill, according to Pelosi. No. It got to the point where he had to file a lawsuit, so I'm certainly in agreement with doing something. But his party should have stopped this before now.
How do you see the role of the Attorney General?
Its primary responsibility is to enforce our state laws.
Okay.
And to advise legal counsel for the legislature and the governor. But you're supposed to see that our state laws are enforced. And I'm going to, as Attorney General, influence legislation and see to it that our laws are enforced. And I don't need to be a lawyer to do either of those. I don't need to be a lawyer to accomplish anything on the list of items I have in my pledge. In fact, it probably wouldn't work if I was a lawyer to, again, try and stop the enforcement of Supreme Court opinions as law, because that's not something a lawyer or someone who's educated as a lawyer is going to do. Lawyers are brought up to believe in judicial review authority, which I reject entirely. So,
your position on legalizing recreational marijuana?
Well, if you pose it that way, I don't think we should legalize it for recreational use, no.
What about medical?
I think we should legalize it for medicinal use, but it's only because I think we could do it legally, and people are opposed to it primarily because they think it would lead to recreational use. I know people who would benefit from medicinal marijuana. I know a lady who refuses to take it. She's in Carolina. She refuses to take it because it's not legal in her state, so therefore she won't take it. And people give up. They say, well, we can't legalize it for medicinal use because that would lead to recreational use. Well, it doesn't have to. But I think we all know that the people who are so adamant about pursuing it for medicinal use want it for recreational use anyway. That's what they're really after, most of them. But I don't think it should be legalized for recreational use, no.
The Attorney General has made a part of his first 4 years in office trying to fight opioid, methamphetamine, heroin abuse, and addiction. Would that be a similar priority if you're the Attorney General, sir?
No. That, as I indicated in my list of pledge items, I would be involved in enforcing the laws related to opioid abuse and advising the legislature, but that's it. That's a primary distinction I make between my campaign and the other two. That's the centerpiece of Schimmel's re-election campaign. Re-elect me so I can continue the war on opioid abuse. And Call is stumbling all over himself, talking about how he's going to do a better job in the war on opioid abuse than Attorney General Schimmel has. That's the war on opioid abuse. Making war on opioid abuse is not a function of the Office of Attorney General, beyond enforcing our laws and advising on it. People need to, I think, ask or consider, ask Attorney General Schimmel where this is going. What's the object here? What's the goal? Is this is this like the Republican war on terror, which is never going to end, or where does this war on opioid abuse end? Are we going to start raiding people's medicine cabinets? I think most of the people who give opioids to others are family members. Are we going to start arresting everybody's grandma, aunt, and sister? This is just a continuation of that rather dirty business of the tobacco lawsuits in the 80s, where state attorneys general, particularly Democrats, sued the tobacco manufacturers on behalf of victims, and not much of that money went to the victims over the years. And so what are we doing in the first place? Attorney General Schimmel is encouraging all these lawsuits against opioid manufacturers. But I don't know how many counties in Wisconsin are suing opioid manufacturers to recover the costs of dealing with this. Well, so what are we going to do? Are we going to put them out of business? Is that the goal here? That's probably what's going to happen.
So you would not have sued as Attorney General the major pharmaceutical houses?
Not the manufacturers, no. I'm not entirely clear on what they've done that's wrong here. They're manufacturing a legal product. People are choosing to abuse those products, a very small number of people. And again, it's not that it's entirely wrong. I mean, we should do something to prevent opioid abuse. But for the Attorney General's office to be involved so actively, I won't be that actively involved in this anyway. But we're suing the manufacturer, or we're taking action against the manufacturer of a legal product. Who are the victims here? Whenever we get a prescription, we all have a book's worth of warnings stapled to the package telling us not to, it's your prescription, don't go giving it to anybody else. Mm-hmm. I'm sure all these opioids have a book's worth of warnings saying that they're addictive. But if that's what we're going to do, I just got to wonder where it's going to end. People in Wisconsin are fond of their alcohol and their beer. And certainly the abuse of alcohol is a much greater social ill than the abuse of opioids. We certainly have a lot more deaths caused in Wisconsin by people who are abusing alcohol. We certainly have a lot more people, many more many more people in Wisconsin addicted to alcohol. We even have a name for them. We call them alcoholics. Are we going to be taking action against breweries in Wisconsin next, or what? I'm just wondering where this ends anyway.
In light of school shootings and mass shootings, do we need to change any gun laws, sir?
No, we don't. Well, I want the legislature to provide armed security services for all public and private schools in Wisconsin that want it.
Arming teachers, do you support?
I don't know. Armed security services. There's no excuse for communities which have their own police forces not having a police presence in schools, in their community schools. And communities that don't have police forces, we should have retired police, retired military, and other people. I don't know about arming teachers. I guess that's probably. I think we should have security services.
Okay, your campaign website is critical of Madison officials who want to move a Civil War monument. Why is that an issue in the campaign for Attorney General?
That's one of the main reasons I'm running, responding to Madison Mayor Soglin's removal of that memorial in August. It's been over a year. I've been angry for over a year about that. It was a year ago this August. I want to see a law passed to protect veterans' memorials anywhere in the state of Wisconsin.
I see.
The VFW considers Confederate soldiers veterans, and that's good enough for me.
Okay.
I want to see a law passed to protect all monuments and memorials, and then I'm running for Attorney General because I want to see that law passed, and I would like to enforce it on your mayor if it's passed, if he does this again. I'd like to see a stiff penalty for this, and burning or damaging the American flag. I want that protected anywhere in the state of Wisconsin as well.
Okay.
Some stiff penalties applied, fines, and so if you want to burn a flag, go ahead, but there'll be a penalty for it. I would like to see, again, stiff fines, and I would like to see these people required to spend a couple hundred hours doing community service at the VA hospital in Milwaukee. And they can push around some of these vets in their wheelchairs for a couple hundred hours as part of the penalty for taking down a monument or memorial or taking down a flag in Wisconsin.
I think a final question is, why are you a better choice than either Mr. Schimmel or Mr. Call?
Well, Mr. Call, if he's elected, wants to use the office of Attorney General of Wisconsin to help his party obstruct the current duly elected president any way they can. So that's what he wants to use the office for, and that's not why we have the office of Attorney General in Wisconsin. Attorney General Schimmel wants to use it to continue the war on opioid abuse, which is not what we have the office for. I don't think Attorney General Schimmel's a good man, but he made a pretty critical mistake after Obergefell, and I don't think he's going to acknowledge that, and I don't think he's going to do anything to oppose enforcing the next Supreme Court opinion as law in the state of Wisconsin.
Okay, thank you. Terry Larson of Juneau is a Constitutional Party candidate for Attorney General. The election is November 6th. Terry, thanks for visiting with WisconsinEye.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Campaign 2018 is sponsored by Wisconsin Hospital Association, Wisconsin Counties Association, Wisconsin Realtors Association, Marshfield Clinic Health System, AARP Wisconsin, and Campaign 2018 partner Milwaukee Journal Sentinel.